Hey everybody, this is Tim Hinton from Marching Arts Education and the Marching Roundtable, and my music is at timhinton.com. John Boguschutz, how are you?
Good. I'm doing really well. I'm a little tired. Regardless, you can check out my stuff at tonedeafcomics.com.
Absolutely. I love what you're doing at Tone Deaf. I'm always looking forward to getting the email with the latest comic.
Thanks.
So if anybody's watching and they haven't subscribed, you should totally do that, because it sort of brightens my morning when I get up and I start going through the slog of emails, and I'm like, oh, there's a comic. Like, it's fun. I like it.
Yeah, they're fun sometimes.
So we may be being very controversial today, but we thought we would tackle this. We're going to do best and worst trends of the last 20 years in DCI. Today we're starting with the best trends that have happened in the world of drum corps in the last 20 years. And so I have to admit that when I was making my list of worst trends, like, I was writing, and then when I started to make my list of best trends, I have written down one thing.
All right, so I think this is where we're going to balance each other out. I was kind of the opposite.
Okay, good.
And
I have to be like the bad guy.
I have a feeling a lot of my good trends are going to show up on your worst trends.
That's certainly possible. It happened. When did it happen with the Christmas songs? Right, when we did if you haven't seen our favorite Christmas songs video, yeah, one of my least favorite songs was your favorite song. So that's the way the world works. It keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
So since you have a longer list, do you want to go first? And what did you have, like, the main thing that you thought of?
Yeah, I think that this one, I know a lot of, or I think it's half and half split. And nowadays, I'm not actually sure. And it happened, you said, within the last 20 years, and it has been almost 20 years, but changing to all key brass, in B flat and F brass instead of bugle. Like, even like 4 years after it happened, after we switched, like, those bugles do not sound good. I'm just gonna flat out say it. Of course, like, chorus did make them sound good, but like comparatively, you can hear. Like, even the best horn lines, like, man.
So are you talking about playing in tune, or are you talking about tone quality and sound?
Tone quality and sound, and intonation, but more so the tone quality. Like, there's a striking difference, and you can tell the year that Phantom switched to B flat from the year before, because they weren't they weren't the first year or two.
They weren't an early adopter, no.
Yeah. But you, like, just them as an example, you can tell. I like the all key brass.
All right. Well, see, now I can't believe you started with probably the most controversial thing. Well, one of the most controversial things. I do not have that on my worst list, so I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. I do think that there are things that the G Bugles did. There was a sound, there was a volume, there was a brilliance to it that I think we have been missing. And I think people are missing. And so there was a trade-off. I do think there's probably better sound and tuning and all in certain ways. But when we get into my list of worst trends and we start talking, I'm just going to mention it, talk about sound reinforcement for brass lines, which is one of my big downers. Like, I think that's why that happened. But let's leave that for the next discussion. Everybody, when you watch the worst trends, you can hear me rant about that a little bit. But so you think that really helped drum corps?
I think so. Like, in not only the sound of it, but also, like, with getting like the younger corps, especially getting more kids involved in it, there wasn't that big step up for them to get involved. Like, oh, you play trumpet? Okay, we play trumpet. And so there wasn't that, okay, now things are going to sound a little differently, because when you play in the center of your instrument, it's not going to be like down a fourth or whatever. It's going to be what you're used to. You play a trumpet, so that's a trumpet.
So when you played a bugle, you found that like a giant, horrible task to overcome, to have to switch the tonality of the key of the instrument?
I mean, honestly, no. But I mean, I remember playing my first year and then going back to trumpet, and I'm not the best player, but it was like trying to get back to that B flat trumpet after the first year. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what's going on here? Like, I had to refine it.
Well, I'm not sure I remember struggling as much as you're describing, but I would say that you could make that case, that it makes it simpler. It's more what they're used to. All right, so let's not beat this dead horse. I do think that's perfectly legitimate thing to put on the list for you. It's not on my list, but I don't have a problem with it being on your list. So I'll say that the thing I wrote down immediately is I feel like DCI shows are now more crowd friendly, more entertaining. I think that they made a very conscious effort, especially the last, say, 10 years, to really think about that. And of course, the reason for that is that they're based on ticket sales and crowds showing up for shows. And it's a different activity than the winter season or certainly marching band. I mean, marching band, it's really all about being educational. What are you teaching the kids? Parents show up for these shows. You're not worried about selling tickets to contests, really. You know, people do a contest with their band to make money. It's the band parents that show up to watch. So there's not that expectation. I mean, we try to make band shows entertaining, at least some people do, or they try to, I think everybody tries to make them engaging in some way. But DCI, I think, made a conscious effort, and I think a lot of it is spearheaded by Michael Cesario. Thank you, Michael, to make it more accessible, more crowd friendly, not quite so cerebral and esoteric, but really more approachable, recognizable melodies. I feel like that's really paid off. If you look at like the last 3 or 4 years of DCI shows especially, I think they're really engaging and tuneful. We're not playing 12 tunes at once that counter each other and your head wants to explode. Like, it's like, let's play a song and let's really make it exciting and have great visuals and dancing and props. And I think it's been a really great trend.
Yeah, I agree. And that, I did leave that one off my list, but that one was, I was thinking about it. And I think it's even been more like it. You can tell within the last 10 years, but I think especially within the last 5 or so years, they've really started to hone in on how to do it a lot better.
Right, and with everybody, you know, everybody's upset about all the changes that are happening in the activity, but then everybody keeps pointing to all the crowds showing up. Okay, well, I don't think necessarily the crowds are showing up because of all of these changes. You know, let's all put on an ugly jumpsuit. Oop, that's on my list for next time too. But I think that people are responding to being entertained and enjoying the music and being engaged more in a better way. So I do think that that's, to me, that's the main reason crowds are packing them in. You know, the shows are more fun. They're more engaging. You're not sitting and watching something that's just so esoteric you have no idea what it means.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, listen, I love those shows too. I love the super cerebral classical shows, but I think that they found a balance lately of engaging audiences.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Okay. What else do you have?
So my next two, I know for a fact that they're on your worst list. So we can discuss them more when we get to that part, but I can mention them here.
All right.
I liked the mic solos.
Okay.
As a trend. Okay. And like my primo example, and I know that you said that you weren't the biggest fan of the ballad, but Blue Devils Ballad from 2017, the year they won, you know, one of those years.
Yeah, Metamorph.
Yeah. That ballad would not have been able to happen if those soloists playing over top of the core were not mic'd, because the core was able to play full volume, and it was so great in like just filling up sound, and they were just able to layer those microphone soloists on top of them. But if they had to back off the core to hear those soloists, it would not have had the same impact. And I know that there's many bad examples of microphone solos and then just microphoning the chorus as a whole.
But those are two different things. See, I don't have microphoning soloists on my list.
Right, but I'm talking about microphone soloists, and I know that there's a Well,
and that's allowed them to do a lot of things. Like now, soloists can be anywhere. So that's been interesting. And like, think of Santa Clara's Ballad this last summer, where you had these two baritone players on either side, and over the top of everything that was building and going on, and it's sort of like just a concert kind of thinking, right? Like where you have all this stuff going on, there's all this background music, but you can always hear what you want to hear because they can adjust. So I understand that thinking, and that part doesn't kill me.
Yeah, and Santa Clara's Ballad this year too is a good example. Those the trumpet trio up front would not have been able to happen, or the core was not able to play full out if they weren't mic'd.
Yeah, and in the past, we arrangers had to adjust for that. So if we wanted a soloist to be heard, we had to make sure that everything else was out of the way. And so that was sort of like I feel like it's just a different world now, because when you're writing for someone that has mic soloists, then you don't have to worry about what's behind it quite so much. You know that you can be heard. So that's always been sort of part of the art for me of arranging, was making sure the soloist could be balanced and heard over whatever.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like a game you had to play to figure out what the accompaniment could be or who should be playing.
Right. Yeah.
But we have sort of taken that out of the equation. I think that's freeing for arrangers. I feel like there's a little bit of a lost art for me, because sort of like staging, it used to be that staging was so important. Well, now with all the miking, that art of making sure things can be heard the right way, it's been taken out of the drill writing. So drill writers might say, well, that really frees me up to not have to worry about it. But I always felt like that was part of the art of drill writing, was making sure that was part of the equation.
Yeah, right. And I think it's also allowed them to do like different effects with the solos, like 2014 Blue Devils, which we're going to talk about during the ballad. I think it was the ballad or the beginning, where the trumpet soloist has like that reverb effect to make it sound old timey. Like, you can do really neat effects with that, and even though that's not done as much, but Blue Coats have maximized that with like soloists like turning some triggers on it and or whatever this like sound effects or something on it.
Blue Coats have been the master of that for sure.
Oh yeah,
they're still continue to be a few years ahead of everybody, but that's been really interesting. Because what's the other one that you have that you think I don't like?
The uniforms.
Ah, okay.
And here's my number one argument for it. I remember it was 2 days ago. I thought about this. I was like, I remember you and I recording a podcast where we went through the finalists of BOA one year, and we talked about how 11 of the 12 corps or marching band uniforms were all black. And I noticed at BOA this past year, for the small sample that I got to see, I didn't get to see a lot of bands, the field was so much more colorful because of the band uniforms.
True.
And I'm feeling that way too about the corps. Like, they're able to do a richer color palette with everybody, not just a color guard, and props with that. Now, granted, it doesn't work for everybody. And everything has its downfalls where, you know, like, we're missing some stuff from some corps. But for the most part, I think corps have figured this out. And there's still, still a way to go with it.
Well, so should I have my discussion about this now? Because there are certain parts of the uniform trim that I like and that I think are working, and there are certain parts that I don't think are working. So do you want to have this discussion now, or do you want to save it for the worst trends video?
Let's save it for the worst trends, because I knew this would show up there.
Okay. Well, so everybody watch the next video that we put out, which is going to be about worst trends of the last 20 years in DCI, and we can talk about that. That's sort of what I have. Do you have anything else that you wanted to mention?
No, those were the three things for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think. If you're watching this, comment wherever you're watching this, and let us know, what do you think are the best trends of DCI in the last 20 years, and what do you think about our comments? We're open to it. This is what we do at the Marching Roundtable, is we start discussions, we get people talking, and I think this is interesting. There are so many changes, John, in the world of drum corps, especially lately, and people have been sort of freaked out and mad, but I would rather us talk about it. Like, I may not like it, but let's talk about, well, why do you like it? I think these kind of discussions are good.
Well, and as you mentioned, as your plus, like, I truly, like, year after year, I'm like, I was so entertained watching these shows, and I feel like the last few years, I'm like, these are some of the best DCI seasons.
Yeah, and there was a time, like especially somewhere in the 90s, where everything got so cerebral, and it's like if you didn't have a college musicology degree or something, like, you really could not even, I don't think it was that bad, but people will claim that. But I do think that it got sort of away from engaging at the level that fans maybe are coming. And I think that was upsetting to drum corps fans, because drum corps originally was playing pop tunes and playing recognizable songs, and it was very crowd friendly. And then we sort of had this artistic detour, which I understand why that happened, but I think we're back at a place where we're being very artistic, but we're bringing the audience with us. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody for watching. John, this was fun. Everybody watch our next one, Worst Trends of DCI. John, this was fun. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Go to tonedeafcomics.com to see the great work John is doing, including the latest comics and great merchandise like posters for your classroom. You can also sign up to get comics emailed to you as they are released. tonedeafcomics.com. Go to marchingartseducation.com, where you can get access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, videos, and coursework. Imagine where you can take your group with just a few new valuable ideas. You can interact with the experts and ask questions during live webinars. MarchingArtsEducation.com. And go to MarchingRoundtable.com to see over 750 podcasts. Make yourself more valuable by listening in the car, at the gym, or at your convenience. There's great entertaining conversations on most every topic you might need help with. Get some fresh ideas to help take your group to the next level at MarchingRoundtable.com.